All right, well, good morning, y'all. Welcome to the new folks who have showed up today. I'm glad to see that we're continuing to get some new interest. Now, for those who are new and may have not seen some of the posts from before, some of what we're trying to establish here is a humanist church, right? So a church that is not based in belief or faith, but in the idea of human progress, starting with ourselves, growing to include our community, and then expanding to ultimately try and promote humanity's survival and enjoyment, really, is what it comes down to. And so every week we look at a topic that helps us to do that. It helps us to reflect. Churches and religions often get a bad rap, but like anything, there is both good and bad in what we can find in the world. So personally, I grew up Catholic, and I've spoken to other humanists who have grown up in different religions, right? And they all had something they enjoyed about their church experience. And while they fell out of the religion due to inconsistencies or conflicts with the things that didn't make sense to them, there are elements that they missed. The elements of community, the elements of service, participating in a community, having a group to rely on when you're going through struggles. And so what we would like to do is create that community for us, for those underserved folks who don't necessarily have a group to turn to that we know understand us, at least at a basic level. And so that's what the church is about. And so every week what we like to do is reflect on a topic together that helps to move us as individuals forward, helps to grow us as a community, and then helps to better us as individual humans in the greater collective population of humans out in the world. And so with that said, the topic this week is actually going to be fitness. It's not a very spiritual topic, but it does tie in very strongly. Hey, Arena. Can you grab a chair for me? Fitness is definitely a topic that ties in because you gain benefits for mental health, and it ties directly to a couple of the services we've had before. So last time we talked about discipline, grit, failure, and trying, right? So fitness requires all of those things. It requires you to try. It requires you to have discipline to start doing it. And it requires you to fail. At the very basic level for muscle failure, but even along the line, sometimes you are not going to achieve your fitness goal or your nutritional goal, but that does not mean that we quit. It means that we learn from our failure and we move forward. And so unfortunately I forgot my paper today, so I will be referencing my phone for notes. So stick with me, please. And I hope that this is beneficial to you all, and I know that in my life, I have actually gotten more fit as I have gotten older. I'm only 35 now, so it's kind of in the middle. But I grew up and fitness was not a part of who I was. I did play games, I tried most sports that were available to kids, but none of them really stuck with me. I was a big fan of books, I was a giant nerd. I say was, but am is probably more the operative verb there. But it's something that I've grown to appreciate over time. And in some particular circumstances, really drove home for me the importance of fitness. The primary one of those is having kids and wanting to be there for them. So I'll share a story with you. So the great thing about fitness is it can actually drive mental health and happiness. We'll talk a little bit how hackable your body and your brain are, and how you can kind of reprogram yourself to get both the fitness and then the mental benefits of it. It does require discipline, and as humans we are designed to be lazy, right? We are designed to conserve energy. From the evolutionary standpoint, food was not always available. And so our bodies are extremely efficient at not giving away calories for nothing, right? In our current day, where food is everywhere, and all the wrong kinds of food, right? That's a really big challenge, and we have to realize that as a baseline, that we are going to have to face that struggle and figure out how do we get around this? How do we hack ourselves to be resistant, to be immune to the challenges of today's food society? And then going back to what I was saying earlier, in terms of our kind of overall church mission, it's difficult for us to help others if we don't help ourselves. And so as we help ourselves become more fit, healthy, we also set the example for others to follow. And it doesn't matter where we start, right? A lot of people will look at me and say, oh, well, you're thin, so it's easy for you. Well, no, fitness is not easy for anyone depending on what your goals are. I'll share this story to start. I had a friend come live with me after I graduated from college who didn't really have great circumstances in his life. He still lived at home with his mom, and his prospects did not look good. And so he was my best friend growing up. I wanted to give him an opportunity for something better. And so I asked him, hey, would you like to come down and live with me? I'll help you get started and get going. And by this point in my life, I graduated from college on the 8-year track versus 4 years, and no, I don't have a doctorate. And I had learned some things. I'd learned to cook for myself and learned about basic nutrition and fitness and whatnot. And so in my house, I didn't have a lot of the kinds of junk food that we often provide ourselves or our kids. And so I didn't have, like soda for instance, I didn't have soda or pop or Coke, depending on which region you're from, nor did I have a lot of snacks, sugar snacks in particular. And between that and he didn't have a vehicle at that time, and so I actually got him a bike, so he had at least had a mode of transportation. He lost 40 pounds in 3 months. I think he started about 270, went down to 240, and his fitness increased dramatically, right? Now that seems like that's pretty severe, right? So he's had a dramatic shift, he's now riding bikes everywhere, and that's true, but nor was it particularly heroic, right? He didn't join CrossFit every day for months at a time. He didn't go out and run and train for a marathon. He just rode a bike and didn't eat that, or didn't really drink as much soda. And so I share that with you because it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you're trying to get to. And fitness is pardon the analogy, but it is a marathon. It is a long-term thing that requires you to, marshal your energy and your ability to make tough decisions. We'll talk about that. But then also to realize that you're going to stumble along the course. And you're going to have times that you're just not going to meet your goal. And so like we said in the last lesson, it's only a failure if you quit. If you don't quit, that's just a lesson. So, we talked about, from the historical perspective, we didn't have the ability to snack. The idea of snacking or eating 6 meals throughout the day was not a historical possibility, right? Food didn't store. The only thing you could store were like potatoes in a cellar, and then even then they would rot eventually, or dried nuts. Really, I'm sure there are some other things. But it's not until we started to preserve things in salt or with other ingredients that we really gained the ability to eat whenever we wanted. So you think about that, that's only been in the last maybe 1,000 years, maybe a little bit longer for different kinds of preservation. But that means that our bodies have not caught up to what our culture has built for us. And that means that we are at a deficit, right? So if we're at the starting block in this marathon of fitness, we've got a parachute or weights hanging off the back of us, trying to keep us toward the start. And then if you think about it, and we'll talk more about fasting in a little bit, but generally we fasted for at least 12 hours every single day. Because you went to sleep when it got dark, because you couldn't do anything else, right? Until we invented forms of artificial light that allowed us to stay up past the sun going down, we generally would sleep from sundown to sunup, right? Or at least a lot more than we currently do today. And you didn't have the ability to go out and forage in the dark for fear of lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my, right? And so, that's another thing that's setting us back is the amount of time that we eat and the ways that we eat have changed, and again, our bodies have not caught up. And then whole food, or whatever you want to call it, just food that was more toward its natural state was what was available, right? It was not something that we could go out to the store and get some ice cream. Ice cream was not a thing, right? Sugar was only for the very, very wealthy when it first came about in its refined form, right? So our ability to get these things to snack just didn't exist. Like I said, the best you'd get away with was raw potatoes or nuts. I'm not a big fan of raw potatoes. Nuts are actually decent, depending on how they're served. But those are the kinds of things that we have. And that's what our bodies are kind of designed to process. And so, think about it in these terms for foods. What would you let your kids have? Or at least ideally, what do you want them to eat? Right? All the things you want your kids to eat, that's stuff you should be eating. And that's tough. My wife has a friend who grew up and his parents didn't feed him a lot of sugar or a lot of extra stuff. And this guy can eat raw, or not raw, but just steamed plain vegetables. No seasoning, no salt, just vegetables. Most of us think about that and say, that's not that appetizing. I know personally I like a little seasoning on there. But that's how he was brought up, right? The other opportunities or options didn't exist for him back then. And we'll talk about options and making decisions in a bit. Options make things hard. But so imagine if we programmed ourselves to like the things that aren't necessarily as rewarding to our pleasure centers of the brain. It's doable. There are a couple things that I've done over time that I found actually work. I used to be a sugar addict, loved me some sugar. I had candy all the time growing up. Most of my teeth have had cavities and have been filled since that point. And in retrospect, I wish I hadn't. But I had grown accustomed to the taste of sugar. Sugar in sodas, sugar in, just literally hard candy all the time. I still like hard candy. Candy canes are my favorite, by the way. Pretty sure, anyway, I'll leave that one alone for now. But I found that over time that I was able to wean myself off the taste of sugar. Right? So personally, one of the things that I did was last, I think September it was, I realized that I had gained a little bit more weight. And again, I'm not a big guy, but it was about fitness. I was feeling a little bit more sluggish, a little bit more tired. I had what I would call, and I still have a little bit of what I call daddy handles right here, right? So daddy muffins right around the sides. And I realized that I was up to the heaviest point I'd been. And I'd always been pretty fit and in good shape. And so I looked at kind of what options are available in terms of how do you deal with this, right? What are some good ways? There's some, not myths necessarily, but misunderstandings about how the body works in terms of calories and whatnot. We'll talk about those. But so I decided to cut sugar out of my drinks, right? It's the easiest way to get sugar into your body are all the drinks that we have. Soda's got 140 calories of sugar on average, you'd say 150. So if you drink a soda a day, right? So over 10 days, that's 1,500 calories. Over 20 days, it's 3,000 calories, right about a pound. Right? So 20 days, one soda a day, you're gaining a pound as long as you're meeting your, so let's say your calorie needs, and that's not a very good way to measure it, but let's say your calorie needs are X, and you're drinking X plus 150 a day. Well, that means that every 20 days you're gaining a pound. Now, again, that's not the way the science works because your body has set weights and it will vary based on that set weight and based on your circumstances, your activity, your hormones, those sorts of things. But when you think about it in terms of simple math, it's something you can cut very easily. You certainly don't need it. And that can bring you down past that threshold, maybe even by only 10 or 50 calories where you start to lose weight. Now, Eric, I know we've had a conversation before about losing weight and trying to cut calories, right? Even if, so I think you said something along the lines of, even if I cut 400 or 500 calories, I still don't lose weight. And there's good reason for that. Like I said, we're designed to be lazy, right? We're designed to hoard calories to provide for us in times of starvation. And if you cut too many, right, you go into starvation mode. Your body will do everything it can to change its metabolism, to be more efficient, to burn fewer calories, and to retain them. So back to my personal story, cut sugar drinks. In the fall, November, December timeframe, I started doing intermittent fasting. It's this new fad thing. That basically, it's not really new or fad. Like I said, we've done it throughout history, almost all the way across humanity. But it's basically this idea that you don't eat for a certain period of time. And there are many variations, and I will not tell you you should do this one. Because again, everything we talk about here is not about the answer. It's about a framework through which to consider a topic. So for me, basically I just don't eat from about 8 o'clock at night until about noon the next day. So it's they call it a 16-8 or an 8-16 intermittent fasting split. And for the first week it was hard, because I had religiously, pardon the pun, eaten breakfast every single day for my entire life. Love breakfast and all of the bad foods that come along with breakfast. Because if you think about it, most breakfast foods are sweet and sold to you by the cereal companies or whoever makes donuts in the area. They want you to think that you need to have a good breakfast, and getting your breakfast in and kickstarts your metabolism, and et cetera, et cetera. It does kickstart your metabolism, especially if you eat sugar. because then it spikes your insulin, your sugar crashes, and then you feel hungry again. So your metabolism will continue to request calories. Calories, please. Calories, please. And you go on a snack throughout the morning and afternoon. And then you're eating things that aren't necessarily budgeted in your nutrition budget. And then you're filling yourself up on these things, these sugars, that do bad things to your body. I'm not saying sugar is bad. Sugar, like alcohol or whatever else you want to consume, is something that needs to be eaten in moderation. It's pretty straightforward. And so, again, back to the story. Cut sugars, started doing intermittent fasting, found that it was not as hard as I thought. It took me about a week to get over kind of the hunger pangs, and it's just not a problem now. It also makes my logistics easier in the morning. I can just roll out of bed, drink water, and I don't need to make breakfast or whatever else, so I get to sleep longer. Sleep's also incredibly important. So those are some things that I learned in my life that have worked for me. They may not work for you, for whatever reason. But again, going back to what it is we're doing here, we're looking for frameworks that help us better understand how to become better at being our human, us as humans. And so those are some things to start looking into, right? And so we can definitely talk more after we're done today on specifics and how do you get to that point where you can make yourself do something that's different, new, or hard. So let's talk a little bit about some benefits of fitness, right? Everybody knows that fitness is good for you, physical fitness. But let's talk about the mental and kind of the communal benefits of fitness. So my dad died last October, and he had been injured for a long time. He, through his job, had fell down a flight of concrete stairs, broke his neck and his back. They didn't recognize the damage that had actually been done, so they just put him in a neck brace and sent him back to work. And he did permanent nerve damage to himself while going back to work and doing that. And so was basically disabled for the last 25 years or so of his life. But he's also an ornery old guy. So with a titanium cage around his neck and a steel rod running down part of his back and not great use of his left arm, he did things like repaved with paver stones that he would break by hand with a hammer and chisel, repaved the side of his house to make a walkway. So he was never one to say, oh, well, I'm disabled, I cannot do. But he didn't end up dying from that. Surprisingly, he actually died from, and he was on huge amounts of pain medication to manage the pain from the nerve damage that had been done. He actually died from throat cancer from smoking. Now, it was complicated by the fact he had been injured because he couldn't be treated. They couldn't give him chemotherapy because he couldn't lie down because of the pain, all the damage that had been done to him caused him on a regular basis. So, yes, it might have extended his life by a couple of years, but basically he died because he smoked, and he smoked a lot his whole life. Now, he was, to be honest, he was fairly miserable toward the end, and I think he was grateful for the release at that point. But that made me think about all the things that he will miss, right, from having smoked. All the things from his grandchildren, who he loved dearly, that he never got to see my son talk. Which, eventually the grandparents will die, right? We understand that. But just knowing some of those things makes me a little bit sad, especially because it was clearly preventable, right? So when I think about that, and then when I think about when I had kids personally, I want to make sure I'm there for them when they're older, right? When they start to have kids of their own, I want to be there to help them take care of their kids, because my wife and I don't have as much grandparent support as we'd like. Partially because we move around a lot, but partially because half the grandparents aren't really there. And that's a challenge, and it's something that has spurred me to be a little bit more cautious. So the fact that I had kind of reached that high point in terms of weight, I realized that it's getting harder to maintain the level of fitness that I'm used to. I realized I have to really start being deliberate about it. And really in the process of trying to get this church started, has made me realize that being deliberate is really what everything is about. All progress is about being deliberate. It's not about being skilled or lucky or having a metabolism. It's about being deliberate. And then, of course, there's the saying, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And it is amazing to think, if we think for one moment and reflect on a situation where you are bedridden. As many of the problems as we have today, whatever it is, Wi-Fi doesn't work, our car's broken, maybe we're broke. Imagine if you were not able to move, or you were so racked by pain that it affected everything that you did. That, to me, is something that it's almost transparent to us. We take it incredibly for granted that we have health of varying levels, but most of it, at least for those who can actually come today, is probably pretty decent. We can walk, we can get around, we talk to people, we can be active in various ways. That is an incredibly valuable thing. And yet, particularly in our society today, we do very, very little to deliberately maintain it. So I think that's a really important point to consider and really hold in our minds for a minute. Because if we don't have our health, we literally have nothing. So I think for most of us as humanists believe in this idea that we have this life, and this life is all that we have. And so if this is the only life we have, this is our only way to experience and enjoy life, then we should probably take exceptionally good care of it. And that's going to mean work, but it's that long-term gain that we have to be after. Now at the same time, you've got to enjoy things. It's through enjoying things and the balance between, that long-term look and the short-term fun, right? But you balance those things, right? You plan for them. I want to change real quick. So I see there's a gym around here that references a Bible verse, Timothy 4:8, because it mentions fitness. What's funny is it actually mentions fitness in the context of fitness is okay, but godliness is better. So it's not really even about fitness. It's just saying that if you're like really big into fitness, you should also probably look to your moral and ethical well-being. And so I wanted to bring that up, one, because I think it's a little bit funny, but two, because I think the passage actually has a point. That while we should have fitness, it's not fitness for fitness's sake, right? It's not about being Arnold Schwarzenegger, bodybuilding. Because that's like an achievement, right? It's something hard. And it might be something you enjoy. But what's the point? The point of fitness is to be a solid human, right? To enjoy the life we have, to build a better life for our family and our community, right? And move the whole humanity forward. So it's not just about the fitness, it's about the bigger picture. And then mental health. So I'll throw up some links later today, but there's a TED Talk, a doctor by the name of Wendy Suzuki. She's actually a brain scientist. And she's realized after a lot of her career that she was very unfit, that she was miserable, and that she didn't have a sense of community. She didn't go out and do things with people either. So both from the mental and physical side, she was suffering, even though she had achieved this level of greatness that we would think is pretty good. She's a doctor, right? She's this world-renowned brain researcher. But she realized how critical exercise is, and so I recommend you watch it. She's a little bit cheesy, but fun, and there's some science behind the benefits, the mental benefits of physical fitness. One of the key things that she holds up is physical fitness is absolutely crucial to at least delaying, if not preventing, neurodegenerative diseases. Because physical fitness actually grows and strengthens parts of your brain that get attacked by those diseases later on in life. So much like your level of fitness, if you start at a strong level, and you do get some sort of disease, you usually have a better chance to fight it off, or at least fight it off over a longer period of time. And so I would say, a lot of humanists that I've met are really big into thinking, right, and being reasonable people. And imagine if you couldn't remember things, or couldn't put together coherent thoughts. Again, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Do you continue to be a humanist if you can't think? So consider that as another point in favor of fitness and that deliberate fitness. And then people a lot of times will wonder, what is fitness? What does it mean to be fit? Does it mean I can run fast? Does it mean I can pick up heavy things? What does it mean? I remember reading an article from a special operations guy, and they talked about what things are most important to them. Now, granted, it's a very special field, but the advice was actually pretty general. He basically recommended that building strength for them anyway, was the number one priority. Then it was cardiovascular fitness, and then flexibility, surprisingly. So specific skills such as maybe squatting so much or sprinting so much were a little bit farther down. But those three things together, and I think they can kind of be reordered a bit for everyday life, and it's probably cardio strength and flexibility are important. So cardio, obviously, for heart health, which is the number one killer on the country's heart disease. Strength is good for a huge variety of reasons, to prevent injury, of course, and then also to be able to take care of yourself, right? To move things for yourself or whatever it happens to be. And then strength and strength training has a lot of benefits in terms of both heart health and mental health as well. And then flexibility. So flexibility is one of the key preventers of injury as you age, right? So maintaining that flexibility of your joints and just using them, right? So using them frequently is going to allow for them to be useful longer into life. And so I wanted to offer those. There are different elements to physical fitness in particular, so endurance, muscle, stamina, speed, agility, strength, mobility, flexibility, and power. And they're all useful for different things, but we all have different interests, right? So we should tailor what it is that we're after to suit our needs and the things that we like to do. So it's a little bit about fitness, a little bit about the benefits. I'm sure you could find literally anything online that is in favor or against different elements of fitness. But I thought it was important to at least just bring up and throw out in the open. These are the things that are kind of generally accepted about fitness and what we should be after. So now let's talk about how to get fit yourself, right? That's the tough thing. How do I make the first step toward fitness? So first, it helps to know what your goals are. You got to figure out where you want to be. What's your vision? At the end of fitness, I look like this, or at least part of the way through fitness, right? And it's never a goal, right? It's usually a threshold and a goal. So my friend Matt, co-founder, if you want to call him that, he actually has a startup that he's been working on called Trackwell. I'll link it again in the video. But they started these different experiments, right? Of, like, they did a 30-day meat diet. All they ate is meat. Most people think, like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And particularly, people ask the question, I know I had the question, how was the pooping? Apparently it was fine, but they did the experiment. They found the results, they marked them down, they found different things about them as individuals and then kind of the group as a whole. But it's all about that experimentation. It's all about, so he talks about the threshold and the goal. So the threshold is, I at least want to be this healthy. And then my goal is to do this. Maybe it's rock climbing. Maybe it's, I want to be able to do 10 pull-ups, right? So keeping that in mind, that it's not just getting to the goal, and if you don't get to the goal, you failed, right? It's about a threshold and a goal. And then, of course, about the journey as you move along. Because once you get a certain amount of fit, it gets kind of a lot easier. Because you realize that you can achieve something in your fitness. So recently, being in the military, we have to take fitness tests. And I, for the first time in 16 years, maxed the score for my fitness test. And it was not because of how I'm built, because I've been built the same for the last 16 years. It was actually because I surrounded myself with people who were better than me. Now, some of that was chance, right? I just happened to land in a group of people that valued fitness. But because of those people, I was inspired to put in the little bit of extra work that got me where I needed to be. So, that's one thing that's really important. Your body and your mind are both hackable machines. We like to think like, oh, well, we are this way. Well, my body doesn't respond to this. Or this is just the way I think. Wrong. It has been shown repeatedly that you can change the way you think. For instance, by doing exercise, if you're depressed, doing exercise has been shown to give both immediate and longer-lasting benefits in protecting against depression. Same thing with using your mind to achieve fitness goals. Your body can actually achieve a lot more than you think you can if you can train your brain to be disciplined enough to push past a barrier. And usually you can do that with things like competition. That's really the simplest way. When you go out and run or do fitness by yourself, you're generally going to convince yourself to quit far sooner than if someone challenges you to something, right? If you go work out with a friend And they're like, one more. All right, one more. You're going to do more than you would have done. So realize that your body and your mind are both hackable machines as a baseline. Then we've got to figure out ways to set our baselines of where we want to go and how we want to do it with either our circumstances, who we surround ourselves with. What we just said is, these are the things that I will do. Right? I've seen some research about instead of focusing on negatives, you focus on positives in terms of setting the type of person you want to be. So the affirmations like, I want to be the type of person, I am the type of person who will work out 3 days a week. And then you go out and tell people about it, so then you're embarrassed if you don't do it, and you use peer pressure on purpose to hack yourself to do the things you don't really want to do, but you know you need to. And then you get someone like, if you really want to do it, in a moment of optimism, go up and say, Mayor, I would like for you to check on me 3 days a week and make sure that I have done fitness on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And now as a community member, Mayor has a responsibility, and probably a little bit of sadism, to check on me and make sure that I did my fitness 3 days a week. And then now I've set the example for the people I've told, and especially if I continue to do it and I achieve that fitness, I show them it's doable, even just to start, and starting is the key. There's a really good thing, so it's in Urban Dictionary apparently, it's called an option. So something that is not an option. So you basically, there's really good research, I think I have a service on it later on, about decision fatigue. Some research out there that shows that we make something like 93,000 decisions a day. And that seems like a lot, but it's not just conscious choices. Right? Think about writing an email and choosing which words you put in the email. Those are all choices. Which way to walk, which words to start with in a conversation, how we navigate our car from point A to point B. Every one of those is a decision. And at the end of the day, we get tired of making decisions. Right? And you actually run out of the ability to make disciplined decisions, I would say. So there are ways to reduce your decision fatigue by taking out options. So one of the researchers that had put forward this idea of decision fatigue, in doing this research, realized that he made more decisions than he needed to. So for instance, when going out to a restaurant, he gives whoever he's asking 2 choices, and then they pick one, right? So all he's got to do is gather a couple that he likes, but he doesn't make the final decision. And then when he gets to that restaurant, he always chooses the second special on the menu. Doesn't matter what it is, but specials all right variables, so he has to try different things. But he set it as an option to choose anything else on the menu. He just will always choose that. So he doesn't have to make the decision in the moment. It's pre-decided. The same can be said about fitness. If you create options, so for instance, soda, right? So sugar soda. I try and make it so that is not an option for me. If they don't have the kind of diet soda that I like, I drink water. I don't have to decide. I don't have to be like, well, I guess in this circumstance, I could do it, right? Because then it's more likely that I continue to go back to sugar soda. Or if you have fitness scheduled in your day, it's not an option to miss fitness, right? So you program in your baselines for yourself, and then you get other people to hold you accountable until it becomes a habit, and then it's self-reinforcing. So I really like the idea of options. Since I've read that research on decision fatigue, I've used it in a lot of things that I do. So I have people who work for me, and I'm a big fan of delegating as much authority anyway. And so when they bring me things to consider, I ask them questions where I've not made the decision. I just ask them questions about the article and basically lead them, or about the thing that they're doing, and basically lead them to see that they've made a good decision, or at least a reasoned decision. And if it's not the way I would have done it, I don't take it and correct it. I just say, that's good enough. And a lot of times good enough is good enough if we realize that it meets our goal, right? So decreasing your decision fatigue allows you to have the willpower to make yourself do the hard things. And doing the hard things are usually the things that are valuable, right? So when I get home at night, do I want to make dinner? Probably not, but if I have enough willpower, I can do it. And I'm generally going to make a more healthy dinner for myself, my family, my kids, right? And then how do we hack even those things, like nutrition? How do we plan for buying the right foods and then having them available so that we can either make them quickly or make them ahead of time, whether it's meal planning, right? All the things that are hard, that take a little bit of work. Those are the things that are most valuable. So set an options, set your baselines, make it so that you're not trying to decide between, fitness and terrible nutrition, right? So I really like that word option. So I would include that in your daily vocabulary for making better choices by programming yourself to do it as opposed to trying to decide in the moment. Nutrition. So we talked a little bit about nutrition. Sugar is bad, but sugar is not evil, right? It's just a thing that in excess, basically, you can kind of overdose on it. You can damage your body by taking in too much sugar. It's kind of over the longer term, right? So there's this idea out there about calories in, calories out, right? I've eaten so many calories, so I either have to burn that many calories or reduce my intake by that many calories. That's not exactly how the body works. It's a simple formula that helps us maybe understand the balance between calories in and calories out, and how nutrition works, but that's not really how that happens. So it's got to do with a variety of different things, but think about it in terms of hunger, right? If you ate the same amount of calories and fat as you did in sugar, which one will you be hungry, or which one will cause you to be more hungry sooner?
The sugar.
The sugar, right? But if it were just calories in, calories out, it wouldn't matter, because after you had burned through X calories, you should just be hungry. But sugar causes an insulin response, which causes you to store fat, and then your body tries to burn all the sugar first, right? When you eat things that are not refined sugar, let's say a fruit, your insulin does not spike in that way. And so your body is able to burn the sugar as opposed to store it. And so if you eat fat, for instance, it's not processed in the same way. It takes longer. It's more of a steady release. Right? So it's not about calories in, calories out. It's about, again, hacking your body to do the thing you want to do. How do you manage hunger to make sure that you're not taking in excessive calories due to cravings? So some of that's based on what you eat, but a lot of it's based on when and how you eat. So I mentioned I do the intermittent fasting, right? So for me, that means I wake up in the morning, don't eat anything. I generally will have a sugar-free drink with some caffeine in it. So you can drink coffee. That's still legit under a fasting regimen. And you can even put a little bit of cream in it, but no sugar, right? And no creamer with sugar in it, because pretty much everything has sugar in it. And then about lunchtime, sometime between 11 and 1, I'll eat lunch. And I usually eat a really big lunch. So realistically, I even take the same amount of base meal calories as I normally would. So I had a huge lunch, so I probably easily compensate for the amount of calories I would have eaten during breakfast. But it's a meal, right? It's not, I ate a little bit of breakfast, and then I snacked throughout the morning, and then I ate maybe just a sandwich, and then I snacked throughout the afternoon, and then I eat a regular dinner. Now I eat a huge lunch, which is usually leftovers from the night before, but it is a full meal because I'm hungry for a full meal. And then I eat a lot, and I generally eat things that have fat in them, fat and protein. I just try and keep sugars and carbs down to lower amounts, but I don't make it zero. And then I'm not hungry for the afternoon, and then I go home and eat dinner. So all I eat all day long is lunch and dinner. Yes, I do have ice cream occasionally in the evening, and I have treats, right? But I feel like for myself, I've got a pretty good balance. I think I've got it fairly well under control. But I found that since doing that, so one, like I said, I've lost 15 pounds since September, and I didn't have like a ton of weight to lose that, from people looking at me per se. But just doing, cutting out the sugar drinks and then the fasting has really been most of it. I have done exercise throughout that time, but your body's actually very efficient when it comes to exercise. You do not burn a ton of calories when you exercise. Right? So if you go for a mile run, you have to really run a mile very fast to burn anything more than like 100 or 200 calories. Like I'm talking like a 5-minute mile. If you're running a 5-minute mile, you might be up around a little bit north of 200. But it is a surprisingly low amount. If you're doing things like high intensity workouts, CrossFit, whatever, you might be getting up there a little bit if you're doing it for a full hour. Because that's what a lot of things are like, oh, running, you can burn 600 calories in an hour. Very few of us run for an hour every day. So it is less about the activity that you do. The activity is about building the strength, the cardio, the endurance, right? Those are aspects of fitness. But weight and most of our health is derived from nutrition. And again, it's both what you eat, but also very much on when and how. So again, that's just my regimen. It works for me. There are other ways that some people do alternate day fasting, where they just don't eat for a whole day, and then they eat the next day. I've tried it. Not as bad as it sounds. Not super fun either, but you don't, people are like, oh, well, I wouldn't have any energy. Really not true. Because the whole idea of fasting is that your body starts to burn the fat cells, right? The storage that we have. But you will never burn your storage if you're burning sugar all the time. And because we eat sugar, right, spikes our insulin, it comes down, when we crave something, the something that we crave is something easy and fast. Those things almost always have sugar in it. So Matt was saying that he had someone that said, oh, I'm on a low-carb diet, and they were eating a protein bar. And he's like, oh, really? You're on a low-carb diet? Can I see your protein bar? And he looks at the back, he's like, do you know how many carbs are in this protein bar? And they're like, well, not really, but it's a protein bar, right? So it must be good. And so he pointed out to them like where it actually shows carbs and sugars on the back of the protein bar, and there's a ton of sugar in protein bars. Not all of them, but most of them. Because they're sweet. You want them to be edible, and protein by itself, particularly like just plain whey protein, is not that good. And so if we're doing this where we're feeding ourselves sugar, keep sugar in our blood, and when you make that transition, it's a little bit hard. That's when you get hungry, right? You're like, oh, well, I'm hungry, so I must need to eat, so I'm going to eat something, and I'm going to get sugars in there, and it immediately cuts the edge off the hunger. But then, of course, it's going to happen again in just a little bit of time where you're going to spike and crash. But if instead you power through that, and you say, I am fasting, that's what I am doing, you'll realize that once you get past that point, you're not that hungry anymore. Right? And you think it's just like your body shutting down or whatever, and honestly in a day that's not true. But what it has done is it's started to go into your fat stores and started to pull it out. And you can last a really long time on that, right? How long can you go without eating?
Depends on your starting point.
Yeah, it depends on your starting point, but usually like
a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks, right? You can only go 3 days without water, right? You gotta have water. And even in that case, you're gonna be, probably injured. And again with eating, that's once you get, past probably a week or so. But you can actually go a fairly long time without eating. And especially most of us have a fair amount of storage, right, that we can use. And so if we're thinking about, I want to lose weight, you can run to your heart's content and never lose it. But if you really want to lose weight, if that's your goal, if that's part of what it is that you're trying to do, then consider that. Consider fasting. Consider a regimen that gets you into using your fat stores on a regular basis. So since I've moved into this, so I still do fitness, and at times I get up and I'll play sports with my team. And so we do ultimate frisbee. And before, if I went out and tried to do activity without eating, I would actually get physically sick because I'm shaking so much, because I'm so hungry, because I was used to feeding that that sugar monster basically. But now my body is trained, or retrained I should say, to use the fat stores. That doesn't happen. I can go out and play a game of ultimate frisbee, which is sprinting around the field for an hour, and then at the end I still am not hungry, because once you start to do activity where you've gone past where you're burning your sugar, you're burning your fats, and you're getting fat released in your blood, and you don't feel the craving. At least I don't. And again, these are not the answer. These are frameworks through which you can consider your fitness, because it may be different for you. So I wanted to offer that in terms of a little bit on nutrition, and then on fasting. And so we talked about fat versus sugar. We also talked about don't cut calories significantly. Small increments, right? 100, maybe 200 calories, that's it. Because if you dramatically depart from your current diet, your body's going to be like, something dramatic has changed. We need to save this guy or girl. So it's more about what you eat and how you eat and when you eat. Don't just say, I have to eat dramatically less, because it will not work. And I have links for all of these that I'll throw up, so I'm not just pulling these out of my rear. And of course, take everything with a grain of salt, right? We're skeptics here. So just because I get up here and say that this is a great way and it can work for you, I'm not selling anything. Go out there, do your research, and then do an experiment. We'll talk about that at the end. Another thing with fitness, don't treat symptoms, right? Generally, we know this idea that we don't, if our leg's broken, we don't just take a pain pill, we get our leg reset or braced or whatever it is. Same thing for general aches and pains in the body, right? The pharma companies in the US want to sell you a pill for everything, right? They want you to be sick, they want you to think you have this kind of disease that they're pitching on television, and they want you to take a pill for it. Matt had another good saying in the research he's encountered with health versus illness, is that sick people are all sick in unique ways, but healthy people are generally all healthy in the same way. Right? So if you think about that, we all manifest some sort of illness or malady uniquely. So if we have some sort of deficiency, we might get injured more often. Or you might break out in hives. Or we might get ill. So it can manifest itself differently in each of us. But if we're healthy, we're generally all healthy in the same way. We get good sleep, we have balanced nutrition, we do some minimal level of exercise, and we just don't have, we drink plenty of water, and therefore we just don't have many problems. And so it's easy to say, well, I've got a headache now, and I got to do this, that, and the other, so I'm just going to take a whatever. Right? But that headache that you have could actually be due to the fact that you sit improperly in your chair at a desk for 8 hours a day. Right? And your head's resting forward, and it's pulling on your neck muscles, which are bunching things up in the back, which then cause tension headaches. Right? So if you thought about it, what you probably need to do is take breaks to exercise and do stretches for your posture. I know because this has specifically happened to me. And of course, the doctor just says, well, here's some ibuprofen. And then I eventually got to a physical therapist, and they actually measured like my posture. And they said, yep, your chin rests too far forward. It's probably because you're hunching over a computer, because that's what we all do. And they said, here's some recommended stretches to help counteract that. And after doing that, and then moving to a standing desk, I have found those things have dramatically decreased, particularly problems in my lower back. And back pain is something that a lot of people get prescribed opiates for, which then of course becomes addictive. I just wrote an article about it today, that some people get prescribed opiates for ankle sprains. And some of them get prescribed an amount that's, one, not reasonable for it, but two, leads 5% of those people to go on to have prolonged opioid use. And it said that 80% of people who ended up using heroin started on prescription pain medication. So I offer that in terms of, not to say drugs are bad, okay, but South Park reference for those of you, right?
Got it.
They are useful, right? We invented them for reasons, and there are many reasons to take them. But if we can resolve it by simply having good health, maybe we should power through whatever it is, or as I like to tell my wife, who chastises me to no end, just drink more water. Seriously, drinking more water will solve the vast majority of what you have. Probably won't solve a broken leg. It might. I haven't tested it yet. But I would highly recommend that you just drink more water. It's water is life, right? I love it particularly. But don't treat symptoms. Think about what's really happening in your life. Going back to my weight loss thing, one of the reasons that I actually started to do it was not just because of how I looked, which I didn't like, but it was because I was having pain in my back when I woke up in the morning. And what I theorize, I don't know for sure because I didn't have anybody measure it, is that my slightly increased paunch in front, I sleep on my side, was pulling, right? So the gravity was pulling my stomach down and therefore pulling in my back and arching it. And that's where it hurt in the morning. And I have found that after doing some work on my core and losing weight, that doesn't happen anymore. Now I could have just started to take pain medication for it, but that's not going to actually fix the problem. I'm just treating that symptom. So consider that. It's tough because you're going through a thing and you're suffering and you want it to just be gone. But give it some thought and realize, hey, this might be something else. This might be something that I can get after and fix for myself. So, drink water recovered. Dehydration can cause an amazing amount of symptoms. headache being one of them, right? So anytime that I even think I'm getting a headache, and same thing with my wife, which is why she gives me a hard time, I drink water. I drink water, I tell her to drink water, I tell everybody around me to drink water. Drink water. If that wasn't clear enough, then drink more water. And last part, I am, for this, is I am not here to tell you all to literally run out of this building and go just start sprinting. If you haven't worked out for a while, and I do this particularly when I haven't lifted weights for a while, I know that at my max, I could probably lift X. And I could go back out there and be like, yeah, I can probably still lift it. But I'm much more likely to get injured that way. And the point of fitness is not to achieve some level of lifting weights. It's just a number, right? It's to achieve fitness. You can't be fit if you're injured. It's kind of tough. So go out there and start slowly. So I've given some advice to some folks who had not worked out in a while. There are really easy things you can do. So walking is one. So it's called low intensity steady state workouts. There's some new research out on it that talks about those being particularly good for fat burning. So basically like power walking. So nothing where you're running, you're getting your cardio going because you start to, so you kick your sugars a little bit earlier, which is fine as long as you burn them out. But then of course you have to struggle with the hunger piece. And you don't want to do it all at once, right? Small steps, small victories. But doing things like that, that's a great start. So you look at other countries around the world, they might still eat a lot, they might eat high-calorie meals, whatever it happens to be. The Germans are a great example, so nothing in German culture is particularly that different from what we eat. They have a little bit more whole foods, but they eat plenty of pastries with sugar and loads of butter. They're so delicious. But they also walk a ton. They walk through their villages, they have walking paths, they love walking. So you might have heard of Volksmarching, right? It's literally people marching or people walking, right? And they just go on these walks, they're just hikes. So they walk more, right? So that helps manage their overall activity, helps manage how they digest, and again, they eat more whole foods and a lot more fat, right? So that helps mitigate some of that. But start slow, particularly if you want to build leg muscle or it's kind of your stability, right? That's what you're based on. Doing chair squats versus trying to jump right into regular squats, right? Sit on a chair, get up out of the chair. Do it again and again. That comprises one set. Do so many sets of those a day, let's say 3 to 10, until you're at the point where you can do regular squats. Because otherwise, and particularly if you have a little bit more weight, you're going to damage your knees. Because your body, your ligaments, are not used to managing the weight distribution in that way. And so start easy. Get yourself to where you're going to have eventual success. Not where you try really hard and say, well, that didn't work for me. Right? Don't set yourself up for failure, though it's okay if it happens. And then, like I mentioned before, surround yourself with people that you either want to be like or basically are better than you at what it is you want to achieve. I have found this to be very, very beneficial. And it literally doesn't matter what it's for. It could be for fitness. It could be for academia. It could be for any other personal achievement. If you're surrounded by people that are doing that thing, you are much more likely to do that thing. I found some more research, and I can't remember where I found it, but it basically said that you are, whatever the feature is that you are after, you are likely to emulate the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so realize that finding a better group of folks is sometimes the best thing you can do. If you're around people that don't want to work out, that eat a bunch of garbage food, and then complain about their fitness, that's probably not your group. Right? And they might be your good friends for something else, but maybe you limit it to that something else and then find another group of friends for your fitness. Again, great ways to hack yourself to be more effective. And so, in closing, set your foundation. Find these ways to hack your body, hack your brain, to achieve the outcome that you want to achieve. And we'll start today and we'll have a little discussion about it. And then, as skeptics, experiment, track. Tracking is super important because things that get measured are things that get done. And then also, in the survey world, when you measure things, it modifies behavior, right? In this case, that's a good thing. When you start to track, let's say, what it is you're eating, you'll tend to eat better because you're paying attention to it. If you're tracking how often and how much you work out, You're gonna pay attention to it. You're gonna realize, oh, maybe it's not that much. Or maybe it's more than I thought, and I can just extend bits of it to make it more beneficial to me. And then ultimately see what works for you. Set small and intermediate goals that give you an opportunity to witness success. And that might just be like, I'm gonna go out for a walk and see how far I can walk, or how fast I can walk a mile. And you do that, and you mark it down. It took me X minutes to walk a mile. And then, after a month of walking, deliberate walking, where you're trying to walk faster, if that's your goal, at the end of the month you measure, all right, now how fast is it for me? Right? If it's not faster, then something's not working. Get with somebody. Don't wallow in your own misery. Say, hey, I was doing this, and I was doing this, and it didn't work out. Maybe I started getting shin and knee pains. What can I do to help with that? Or you can see that, hey, I can walk this 2 minutes faster now. I have now achieved a fitness goal. Let's see what else I can do. That's the key to improvement, right? And then now, I want everybody to think for a little bit about what fitness goal do you want to achieve? So you need to have a specific fitness goal and a time frame, and then ideally a couple of steps. So take a few minutes now to talk with your partner, who you're sitting with, and say, this is a goal that I'd like to do in the next time period. And it could be something easy, or it could be something a little bit longer term. So do that now. For you at home, do the same thing on Facebook. If you have a fitness goal you'd like to do, throw it on the Facebook. And we've got people who are fairly fit that we can actually maybe make a couple of recommendations, or at least offer encouragement. Drink water.
My problem is I'm going through a divorce and stress and depression. Like I guess I have to control that. It's like my ex-wife or soon to be ex-wife really stressed me out sometimes. I just want to get,
Good. Just to get yourself to go. That's good. My husband has a vision and decided that we are trying to be more active as a family, to be more active together, so that even my 4-year-old, so that he can see us being active and that we're being healthy together. So that's one of our goals, is just to be more active as a whole family. So whether that's going for walks or playing games, soccer together, whatever, or going on a hike, riding bikes, to be more active as a whole. And for me, I'd like to, lose weight a little bit. So my goal, I go to the gym. There's times when I'm like, oh, I go to the gym every day for 2 weeks, and then there's times that a month has gone by and I haven't done a thing to get myself done. So for me, it's just motivation. I need to be motivated somehow. I want to stay motivated, and things like that. I got sick. I was sick for a month, and then that it killed my it killed my start over from the very beginning. Yeah. So my goal is to not let those setbacks set me back.
Pains and aches and just
my husband and I were doing landscaping in our front yard, and so we've been digging rocks out, pulling out stumps. My husband pulled out a whole stump. It took 2 days. This is just hammering, and I helped load soil and unload soil, and pull out bushes and stuff. And so that, I have never sweated so much in my life. It's because we're outside, for hours, all day long, outside, just sweating.
Gardening is hard work.
Yeah. So that was just one of the things that we started doing.
But to me, gardening is so much more logical with knowing, because one of the psychological problems I have with gardening.
Gotta think we're gonna pay her for 8 years.
Is you're using the best energy so they're not
So
accomplishing.
it's
Right,
like, I'm
so
gonna,
I wanna bring it back and ask if you guys
You
would
just
share
don't see it at that
a
moment.
couple of your
You
goals,
have to wait.
just to see kind of what people are interested in.
Yeah.
So, who'd like to offer a fitness goal?
For me, I would like to, well, I have two, but they go into with running. So, one of my goals is I want to run a half marathon. I don't really have a time for it yet, and then, for my other one, I wanna run 3 miles or 5 kilometers in, 21 minutes. So, 7 minutes a mile, that's one of mine.
Okay.
Cause I used to run and stuff like that, and then after high school and stuff like that, I stopped. So now it's like, I wanna get back into it and,
Okay.
challenge my friends and stuff like that, cause we
So-
challenge each other.
What I recommend is go out and find a half marathon that's 6 months away
Mm-hmm.
and sign up for it.
Oh, okay.
And then, because you talked about you had done running, and it's
Yeah.
probably not that far distance, but sign up for it, right?
Okay.
Invest in it and say, this is the thing I'm going to do, and then back it up from there, right? If I want to run this distance at this time, then I know I need to first go out and do an assessment, right?
Right.
What's my baseline? So first, see if you can do the whole, 5K, and you probably can, so that's good. See what the time is. It's 25 minutes, then all right, well, I need to break it down. So how do I get faster? So personally, I found one of the best ways to get faster is sprints.
Yeah, interval.
Yeah, even for longer distances, doing sprints will build you that strength and the endurance to do that. So we can talk more about that offline, but do that.
Oh, yeah.
Specific, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, SMART goals. So I'm gonna do a half marathon. It doesn't have to be 6 months, I'm just throwing out a time frame.
Yeah.
But say, I'm gonna sign up for this one, and I'm gonna do it. Right? So that's what I would say. Same thing for a 5K, do the same.
Right.
So,
That's
okay, good. Who else? Eric?
I need to lose 50 pounds.
Okay,
Yeah, it needs to be a year or less, I would hope.
okay. So what's the interim goal then? So 50 pounds in a year, that's a really big goal. But what's the interim goal?
I don't know, I eat when I'm stressed
Yeah.
and when I'm depressed, so I found that to be the way it is with me, so I have to, I think, eliminate some of those things to even make this long-term goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So what ways can you start on that? Right now, what ways can you start? So stress, right? So instead of treating the symptom, right, what's the root cause? You got a lot of stress in your life. So how do we get after the stress portion, right? So that's something we can talk about.
Right.
But then also, what's the coping mechanism, right? Because right now you're saying your coping mechanism is eating.
Right.
So how do we replace that coping mechanism with something else? Right? Who do you call? Where do you go? Basically set your default list. Put food as an option. Food, realize that, hey, I'm feeling stressed.
Yep.
I know food is an option. I can't go to that one. What else do I got? And build a menu. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, that sometimes, I'm a stress eater too, I totally get you. Sometimes if you have to eat, instead of having the sugar and the easy things to eat out, make it so that you're eating good things, so put out things like celery, that you can, that at least
Yeah.
they're low calorie and you can eat a ton of it, and
Or even something like cheese. So cheese
Yeah.
is one of my favorite snacks. If I've got to grab something because I know I'm not going to eat in a certain time frame, I'm like a little kid. I just go grab a cheese stick, and my mom actually got me turned on to those. That's what she likes. But it's something where the fat takes the edge off the hunger, but it's also got protein in it. So it's not entirely bad, but it feels more satisfying than the sugar snacks.
a
So-
piece of fruit.
Right, so set your defaults. So in terms of both food, right, so only keep the things there that are a little bit better,
Right.
but then also figure out what is your default response. And then after that, we can talk about fasting, we can talk about, nutrition, meal planning, whatever it is, to get more specific. But those are the things that you have to say, I want to be the kind of person who does this, who has healthy food in the house. because I want to live this long, right? Or I'm going to lose 50 pounds in a year. Totally doable.
Sure.
But it's the interim goals. So it's 5 pounds in 2 months, right? Just to get it started. And then setting up the things that are actually going to show you the successes. And it's not really about the pounds, right? Because if you gain, 50 pounds of muscle, you're probably going to lose the 50 pounds of fat you gained. So your weight will actually be the same. So it's more about your fitness level and your body composition, right? So again, it's not about calories in, calories out. It's not about poundage gained and lost. It's about the level of fitness. So, good. Karina, do you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to add that when I stressed, I was eating too. So last year when I was so stressed, I started going to gym like every morning and every evening. So basically I was running 5 miles in the morning and 5 miles at night. And all day long I was just eating roast vegetables. That's it. And for 1 month I lost about 20 pounds. Yeah, but it wasn't like my goal.
Right.
I started running and when I run I don't think about stress,
Right.
It was like way to get out from stress.
Right.
Run from stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not always I could do that because I never could run, really. I never did running before. But I became good runner.
Strong outside.
Cold front's coming in.
And now I'm bored running because it's always just by myself.
Right.
I'm so tired to be alone. So now, like, I'm happy with my body and I don't need to lose weight. I want to do something social, like activities, and to find partner or
Right.
one thing I want to try is dance. So we will see. Because we spent like half day in YMCA and it's only me and children. It's always
Right.
alone, I'm so tired to be alone.
So for you need to find an incentive to keep
Yeah,
fitness fun, basically.
I need activities, but with group of people.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So those are all great, so one, great goals, but then two, some great ways to talk about incentivizing yourself, right? Setting the baselines to get you to start with that. So with that, we'll get it closed. Just make sure that we don't need to take shelter for a tornado. And thank you all for coming today. We'll close, but those at home, as we like to do every day, or every Sunday, share one thing. It can be on the Facebook or just on, online, or call somebody. Share one thing that you were grateful for in the last week, and one thing you're looking forward to the next week. So thank you very much, and have a great Sunday.